Welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. I do want to let you all know that we are being recorded and we are in focus mode, which means you won't be able to see any other participants. You can still reach me through the chat, and if you do want to send a chat to everybody, you can send it to everybody. But there will be a couple of times that I will invite you to make a comment in the chat if you want to. So let's go ahead and jump in. Today's topic is mastering confidence, cooperation, and competition for women at work. So let me introduce myself. I think just about everybody on here knows me, but I want to make sure I'm Laura Brown, and I want to talk about how I can help you. So my background is I've been a corporate trainer for years. I've been in HR for global tech companies for many years. I'm the author of 11 books. My 11th book just came out. I'm a business coach. I've written for Forbes. I've been quoted in major publications, including Cosmopolitan, Family Circle, USA Weekend, lots of different areas. And I want to help you. So as part of all of this, I also spent almost 10 years at a company called Women Unlimited, where I coached and trained high potential women from Fortune 100 companies. And so some of the things I'm going to talk about today are things that I taught there. And also some of the things are things I've taught in many other companies. So first, we're going to start off with the basics of confidence. I'm going to break it up into three areas. How do you look confident? How do you sound confident? And how do you feel confident? And obviously, all of them are connected. So let me just show you a picture to start off with. So if you take a look at the picture of these two women, would you say to yourself, and you don't have to answer in the chat or anything, I just want you to think to yourself, do you see them as high confidence or low confidence? Typically, people see them as high confidence. Part of it is take a look at their faces. There's the smile. They look like they're leaning forward a little bit. Now, sometimes people see that the person with the arms crossed as, oh, arms crossed means that you're not confident. But actually, it can show confidence. It can show determination and also show you're cold. But in this case, it does look high confidence. Now, let me contrast it with this picture. So when you see the picture of these women, what do you think is low confidence? And so a lot of times what happens is that first look, you get that sense of low confidence. And it's only when I stop you and say, okay, what exactly is low confidence? So the woman on the left, looking away, biting the lip, low confidence behaviors. And then the woman on the right, look, she's playing with her nails. And also she's not smiling. So, and not that smiling is necessary to look confident. It is simply a way that it can look confident. So that's one thing to take a look at. How do people look? Now, let's contrast that with these two women. So if you take a look at these two women, are these two women more high confidence or low confidence? So I'm not sure if you know who they are, but I just want you to pause for a minute and think about the way they look. Do you see high confidence or low confidence? And typically it's high confidence. And the woman on the left is Indra Nooyi, former CEO of PepsiCo. So again, you would think that she certainly has high confidence. And the woman on the right, Sheryl Sandberg, former CEO of Facebook. So you would see that high confidence, again, how they're looking straight ahead. There's the smile. If you look at Indra, she's leaning forward. So you can see that there are certain things that you can do with your body that will look confident. So, well, now that I've shown you the pictures, let's dive in a little bit more about what looking confident really is. So the first thing is you want to have good posture. You want to sit up straight. You want to be still. So low confidence tends to look like playing with hair, playing with nails, playing with necklaces, playing with bracelets, things like that. That looks very low confidence. And you want to take up some space. And I don't mean you want to, spread out so, you take up all the room. But let's contrast it. So if you walk into a meeting, and you don't feel confident, you think, I don't belong here. What do? We sort of sit in the corner, or we don't take up space. We make ourselves smaller, or maybe we don't even sit at the table. We sit sort of off to the back. And so that's if you're not confident. If you are confident, you take your seat, you sit there, you put your things out there, you take up the appropriate amount of space. So if you feel confident, you will take up some space. Now, it's interesting when I think about good posture, I'll tell you some stories. So one woman at a certain company was doing this training with me. And so we talked about good posture, again, put your shoulders back, sit up straight. And she was funny at the end of the day. She's like, really, does this stuff work? And I said, just try it. So she got back to me and she said, "You're not going to believe this." By the way, I hear that a lot. "You're not going to believe this." And I always do believe it. So she said, "I was in a meeting with my manager and a number of other people. And she said, the only thing I did differently is I sat up straight and I took up a little space. That was it. And after the meeting, my boss said to me, 'Wow, you really seem much more in charge in that meeting.' She said, 'Laura, I did nothing else. That was it.' So I just want you to really pay attention to the fact that how much space you take up, how you sit up, how you have your head can give subtle signals to other people that either you're confident or you're not confident. So I want you to think about that. The other thing I want you to consider is controlled gestures. So think about when you're nervous. When you're nervous, you're sort of, moving things and, you're shuffling around papers and you're doing stuff. That looks not comfortable. That looks not confident. Instead, confident people move deliberately. They appear calm. They don't move things around. They don't have to push things. Instead, they just sit there. And so I want you to think about, again, when you're sitting in a meeting, when you're talking to somebody, when you're sitting on Zoom, how are you looking? Do you look calm or do you look like you're fidgeting all the time? Another thing you can do to look confident is to make eye contact. And so if you think back to these pictures, again, they're looking straight ahead. Now, one thing I have to be careful of is that there are cultural norms for eye contact. So I worked at a Japanese company for many years, and for Japanese, that it is considered rude generally to make direct eye contact with somebody else if you're staring at them. Now, for Americans, it's very different. Americans expect, if you are not staring at me, that I don't trust you or you're not confident. So what I say is, first of all, make appropriate eye contact. And if you're not sure, look at the person, even if you're not, staring them right in the eyes and making eye contact. You need to look at the person. If you start to look down or look away, people either think you're not confident, you're not interested, you're busy with something else. So make sure that you're looking straight up at the other person. Now, there's some great information. I'm going to suggest a TED Talk. I hope you will go ahead and take a look at it. It's about 20 minutes long. It's by a Harvard researcher. Her name is Amy Cuddy. So go to TED.org to watch it. And it's one of my favorites. It's one of the most watched ones. And basically, I'll net it out. The idea is that she and her team at Harvard did some research. And what they found is if you spent 2 minutes in a higher power body pose, which means you put your arms out, you put them on your hips like Wonder Woman, and you spread yourself out. If you spent 2 minutes in that, it actually changed some things in your body and you felt more confident. And if instead you sort of made yourself small for 2 minutes, it made you feel less confident. Now, there have been some questions about the research, but I do believe that it makes a huge difference in how you're showing up. If you think about it, though, let's say right before you're having a big meeting, what do? We sit there and we wait and we look at our phones and we make ourselves small. We may not be feeling small, but chances are we're leaning over looking at our phones. Instead, before the meeting, if you sat up straight, if you made yourself bigger, if you had higher power body language, you would feel better. Now, I am not saying go into a meeting and sit like this. Obviously, that's pretty silly. Instead, what I normally recommend is before you have a meeting or before you're doing something difficult. So what she says is strike a power pose for 2 minutes before a meeting. So what I suggest is before the meeting, you go to some place that you can actually stand for 2 minutes in the Superman pose or the Wonder Woman pose, and that will make a difference. So I did a 1-year leadership program for women at a tech company. And what I did during that time is the women had to make presentations. And so to practice this, I said, we had another room, we had our main room, we had another room. So I said, go in the other room, and for 2 minutes before your presentation, I want you to stand like this, and come back in and make the presentation. And they felt more powerful, they felt better, they felt more confident. So I would highly recommend that you try it. And I can't tell you the number of times that before a meeting, before a tough meeting, before a tough phone call, I would run into the bathroom and I would stand in the stall for 2 minutes and I would have my power pose so I could calm myself down and feel more confident. So give it a try. Now that was about looking confident. Let's talk about sounding confident. So sounding confident, how you say something. So first of all, make sure that you're loud enough. And a lot of women don't want to be too loud. And I remember going into a meeting room I was giving, it was a big room. I was giving a presentation there, and I asked one of my coworkers, said, go in the back of the room, and I'm going to be in the front of the room, and I'm going to talk, and I'm going to see how loud I need to be. No, I'm already pretty loud. And it was interesting because I really had to get louder. She kept saying, can't hear you well enough, can't hear you well enough. And so what you may think is just fine, maybe is not loud enough. So make sure you're loud enough to get heard. The other thing you want to do, confident people, is slow down. Again, let's think of the contrast. If you're nervous, what do? We talk really fast, and we just try to get to the end because we're afraid that somebody's going to interrupt us and we're not going to get to finish to talk about what we're going to say. Okay. So slow down. Now, I'm from New York, so I typically talk pretty fast. And so I have to slow myself down. Because here's the difference, that powerful people who are confident, they don't feel the need to go really fast because they don't expect to be interrupted. So if Michelle Obama was sitting here, which I would love, and giving a presentation, none of us would be interrupting her trying to get the floor. No. So she has the power to be able to slow down and pause and say, let me tell you the most important thing you need to know. And we'd all lean in a little bit. And then she would tell us. So the point is, powerful people pause. And if you're confident, you can slow down because you know you will finish. And either nobody will interrupt you, or if you get interrupted, you will stop them and you will keep going. So sound confident enough, slow down. The other thing you want to do is pay attention to your pitch, because when we get nervous, our voices tend to go up a little bit. And so just pay attention. Is your voice going up? And so a lot of times, again, before I make a presentation, I just pay attention and I adjust my pitch just a little bit and bring it down just a little bit so it doesn't go up like that and I don't sound nervous. The other thing that you can do is pay attention to how you end sentences. So especially if we're not feeling confident, we may make a statement, but we go up at the end of the sentence so it sounds like a question. Instead of saying, I think we should do this, we go, I think we should do this. And you may not realize, but now that I've mentioned it, pay attention to other people and pay attention to how you do it. Because now, again, everybody's on Zoom, so you can listen to a recording later on and see how you come across. So if you're the kind of person that tends to go up at the end of sentences, then make sure, especially if you're nervous, force yourself to go down. We need to do this. I think we should go here instead of I think we should go here, because again, that doesn't sound confident. So that first part was how you say it. Now let's talk about the second part, what you actually say. So it's important to use statements to sound confident, not questions. And a lot of times we don't think about it. And a lot of women, I'm going to make some generalizations today, a lot of women use questions to involve. But sometimes hearing involving questions makes other people think you don't know what you're doing. So it's important to make sure that sometimes you make statements, we should do this. Or if you want to make, ask a question, what do you think we should do? I have some ideas. And then you tell them. Now, part of sounding confident is being clear, not hinting or suggesting or hoping. I'm going to give you 2 examples of that. So sometimes I coach women on how to get a higher salary. And I coach men too, but I typically coach women on that. And I remember I was talking to one woman and she said, well, that's not going to work for me because I already asked for a raise. My boss said no. And I said, okay, well, tell me what happened. And so she said, well, I said to my boss, it would be nice to make some more money. And he started laughing. He said, yeah, it would. And she said, see, he didn't give me a raise. And so I hope you heard what I heard, which was, okay, you didn't actually ask. You hinted. Instead, you have to say, I want to talk to you about a salary increase. That would have made a difference. I want a salary increase. I deserve a salary increase. Now, let me give you another example. I talked to another woman and she was really, she was in one of my classes. She was really upset. And afterwards I said, what's going on? She said, oh, I can't believe it. This guy at work, he just got this project that I have wanted. Well, what happened? So apparently months before, she had heard that there might be a project in Spain. And so she mentioned to her boss, that she was interested. And then she found out that day that this other guy, George, got it. And so she said to her boss, well, you knew I wanted to, I wanted that project, why didn't you consider me? And the boss said, I don't remember you saying that. And she said, yeah, I said I was interested in the project. And I started taking Spanish lessons. He didn't hear it. Now, we have no idea exactly what she said because it was months previously. But whatever she said, I told you I'm interested. Saying I'm interested is a lot different from I want to work on the project. Because here's what happened. She found out what George actually did. So what George did months before, when he found out that there was a potential for a project, he apparently said to his boss, hey, I'm interested in the project. I really want to go. And he was very specific. And the boss at that point said, well, it's months away. We're not sure. Okay, great. I just want to make sure that I really want to do this. And the boss said, fine. And then what happened was George followed up. George said, I just want to, hey, what's going on with that project? I just want to, reinforce. I really want to go. I have the skills. I have the knowledge. I could really help. And the boss say, fine, it's not going on. And so I guess every couple of weeks, George would say, hey, what's going on with the project? And sometimes the boss would laugh and say, no, not yet. So when there was a meeting and the senior leader said, we have a go on this project, who should we send? That boss immediately said, hey, George wants to go. He's the right person. He's prepared. Boom. So be clear. Make sure that people know what you want, and also reinforce it and say it again, because we're all busy. Sometimes we don't hear it the first or the second time. Now, when you want to make sure that you sound confident, use confident language. I will, I can, I do. Don't use qualifiers. And qualifiers are something that we tend to do. And women tend to do it as a smoothing tactic, that we don't even realize we're doing it. And so a qualifier could be, maybe this isn't a good idea, or we've probably already tried this, but things like that. And what that does is it softens it. And so if the other person is going to say no to us, it's okay, because I just said, hey, maybe. Here's the problem, though. When we use a qualifier and say, maybe this isn't a good idea, what did you just tell the other person? You just told the other person, this isn't a good idea. Don't listen to me. So get rid of qualifiers. Just say, let me tell you my idea, or let's go ahead and look at this. Take the qualifiers out. Don't smooth it over. What you want to do is make sure you sound confident. When it's what you say, use concise wording. Know when to stop. Now, there's a terrible stereotype that some men have had, which is women talk too much. And what's interesting is research shows that at work, in fact, that's not true. But what may happen is, if you are nervous, you keep talking and you keep going and going and going because, well, you're not sure and you haven't quite gotten to the point. And if you keep talking, maybe you'll get it all in. And then finally, there's somebody interrupts you, or just sort of peters out. Well, okay, I guess that's what I'm thinking. So instead, confident people use concise wording. They say, this is what I want to tell you, and here it is. Boom. And they end up. And so that's why I wanted to mention it to you. So when you're in a meeting and you're thinking about what to say, think about, how can I make it concise? How can I make it clear? How can I make it short? Because if you get a reputation for being the person that comes into meetings and you say short, important things, when you open your mouth, people are going to listen to you. If instead you're the kind of person that just sort of, says, well, you know what, I have this idea. Hold on, let me just talk it out. And I'm not sure that there's then people are going to look at you and go, oh, yeah, I'm not going to listen to her. So again, do you sound confident because you're using concise wording? It's short, it's impactful, and that's what you want to go to. You also don't want to use troubles talk. And this is from a book called Talking from 9 to 5 by Dr. Deborah Tannen. And by the way, I'm going to recommend some great resources later on. And so Dr. Deborah Tannen is a linguist. And what she does is she audio tapes men and women at work. She also audio tapes little boys and little girls, which we'll come back to. And so when she was audio taping men and women, what she found is that many women, now men did this too, but the higher percentage were women. Many women did something that she called troubles talk, which confesses insecurities. So you might say things like, oh, I'm not good at technology. Why? Because when you confess insecurities, it bonds you to the other person. So if somebody says, oh, I'm not good at math, and you might have gotten straight A's at Harvard, but if you go, math has always been a problem for me too. then you have this bonding. Okay. The problem is this bonding doesn't sound confident to other people. So if you say that to, oh, I'm not really good at math, somebody else will think, oh, she's not good at math. Or, oh, you know what? I've never been good at technology. They're going to take you at your word. They don't see it as a bonding opportunity. They see it as, Laura's not good at technology. Okay, well, then I'm not picking her for this project. So be really, really careful about that and think, am I doing this? Am I going, yeah, me too. Yeah, I never have, just to bond with somebody else. And it can happen in a second, but we're really careful about that. Now, the other thing that I mentioned, and I mentioned it in the what was important, is what you want to do in order to make sure that you sound more confident. If you do nothing else but this, is stop saying I'm sorry. This is so key. It's so important. And we don't even realize it. And so most of the time, especially women, not always, most of the time, women just put I'm sorry into conversations again as a smoother. Because if you say I'm sorry, then it calms things down. And so what happens instead is, even if you're not sorry about something, we end up saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm late for the meeting. Oh, I'm sorry about this. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Now, I will tell you, if you have made a mistake, then go ahead and apologize. That's something totally different. But this is just a sort of smoothing over, I'm sorry. And you want to stop that. Now, here's what I did one time in one of the classes. I said, your homework assignment, and we can make this as homework assignment, but obviously you're not going to turn it into me. The homework assignment is, I want you to go back to your emails over the last week or two and see how many times in your emails you start off with I'm sorry, or you have I'm sorry someplace in there. And then start the next time you write an email, make sure that you don't use I'm sorry. It's interesting. So one of the participants came back to me and said, so this was really interesting. I realized how much I start off my emails with I'm sorry, and I never thought about it. And again, because think about it, if you get an email that says, I'm sorry, I didn't get back to you on time, the message you get is, oh, Laura doesn't get back to people on time, or, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't give you I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong information, or I'm sorry this, I'm sorry that. Again, the message is that Laura does things wrong. So when you say I'm sorry, some people will take it that you are doing something wrong. And what was really interesting with this person is she said, I especially do it with, there's somebody in another department that I have a really hard time with. So I end up apologizing more. And she realized it was because she was trying to smooth things over. So she said, the interesting thing was, I had a draft of an email and I started out with, I'm sorry. I got rid of the I'm sorry. I sent the email, and she said, I got back the best response that I have in months because I didn't start out with I'm sorry. Now, here's what I'm going to tell you. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, say, thank you. And that's going to sound kind of crazy. But instead of smoothing things over, so let's say I'm a minute late to a meeting, and I might say, oh, I'm really sorry for, for delaying all of you. That's a little bit much. Instead, just say, thanks for waiting. Let's get started. Or if somebody sends me a reminder saying, hey, I'm still waiting for that report from last week, instead of saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't get to it, I'll send it to you, today. So, oh, thanks for the reminder. I will get that to you today. Again, it's a very small thing, but instead of you sounding not confident or less than, you're just saying, thank you, I will do it. So I want you to think about that. Again, if you haven't made a mistake, get rid of the I'm sorry. And also I want you to pay attention to other people and you in conversations. How often are you saying I'm sorry? The other thing I want you to get used to doing is accept credit for what you do. Don't say it was nothing. I know so often people do that. You might have worked the last 2 weekends. When somebody says that was a great job, what do? We say, oh, it was nothing. Why? Because we don't want to feel like we're boasting. Instead, here's what you do. Just say thank you. So when somebody says great job, say thank you, or say thank you, I'm glad you noticed. Thank you, I worked very hard on this. Now, I train this and I know this and I do this, but it's still hard sometimes when somebody compliments me, okay? Because again, there's that feeling that, that we all get, oh, this old thing, oh, it's got a rip here, I got it at a thrift store, but so I even have to push through it, but it's important. And I'm going to push you to do something even more. So if somebody says, great job, if you can say, thank you, I'm so glad you noticed, because you are appreciating them, and don't fight with them and say it was nothing, just appreciate them. You can add to this and say, I'm so glad you noticed. I bet my boss would love to hear that. Would you send her an email and letting her know how much you like that project? Now, that's a harder one, but that's something that you can work towards. But make sure that you accept compliments. Now, let's go through a couple of things. So here's what somebody might say that's not confident. If it's okay, do you think we can start the meeting now? And you can see in the beginning, if it's okay, that really is, that's diminishing, okay? That's taking it away, but that's smoothing it over. Like, are you okay with that? No, instead say, let's start the meeting. If somebody's not okay with it, they will let you know. But you can see the difference. If it's okay, do you think we can start the meeting? Maybe, possibly, okay? No, let's start the meeting. How about this one? I might like to take on the XYZ project. I mean, if nobody else has said they're interested in working on it, absolutely not. Instead, I'll work on the XYZ project. I want to work on the XYZ project. I'll volunteer for the XYZ project. Now, if somebody else is interested, then they'll tell you, but instead of saying, I might, I mean, if nobody, is it okay with you? So make it sound more confident. And again, make it sound shorter. So we've talked about looking confident. We've talked about sounding confident. And now let's get to the final one, feeling confident. Now, what's interesting is a lot of times people will say to me, but Laura, I don't feel confident. And the looking confident, the sounding confident, the feeling confident are all connected together. And so the fact is, even if you don't feel confident, you can show up and look confident, and you can show up and say the right things and sound confident. What will happen is people will respond to you like you're confident, and you will start to feel more confident. So you don't have to feel confident in order to start with that. Amy Cuddy, the Harvard researcher that I mentioned before, has an interesting way to say that. So she says, some people say fake it until you make it. But she said she doesn't agree with that, and I don't agree with either. Instead, fake it until you become it. So you may try and act confident until you are able to feel confident, and that's fine. And that's why you focus on the looking and sounding, even if you're not feeling it inside. So how can you feel more confident? So one thing is to understand the imposter syndrome. And so when I say the imposter syndrome, most people say, oh yeah, the imposter syndrome. Oh yeah, I feel I'm not good enough, or I feel you're gonna, find me out. And it's so fascinating because years ago I was working with a woman at Women Unlimited. She was at a major corporation, and she had 2 master's degrees, and she was incredibly high level up, had an enormous amount of experience. But a one-on-one, she admitted that she had the imposter syndrome. She felt like that she wasn't good enough, that they were going to find out that she wasn't perfect. Now, of course, none of us are perfect because we're human. But when I heard that from her, it was like a light bulb went off. I'm like, man, if this woman, who I just thought was amazing, if she can feel like she's not enough, no wonder the rest of us feel like we're not enough. And let me tell you something else about the imposter syndrome. So it's funny, a couple of years ago, I was talking to a male friend of mine, and I mentioned, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing a talk on the imposter syndrome. And he's like, what's that? And I looked at him and I said, the syndrome where you feel you're not good enough and people are going to find out. And he's like, that's not a thing. And I was floored because I've never had a woman say that to me. The women are all like, yeah, I feel like an imposter. I'm like, yes, it's a thing. There have been books written on it. There's research on it. And he's like, no, it's not. You just made that up. Anyway, we changed the conversation. So a couple of weeks later, when I saw him, he said, I checked that out. That imposter syndrome thing, it's a thing. You were right. I'm like, duh, yes. Now, that's not to say that only women have the imposter syndrome. Men and women have the imposter syndrome. Research shows, though, that more women tend to have it than men. But it was just fascinating that something that so many women think, oh, well, it's so obvious, was something that a guy disagreed with me and said, no, that you just made that up. So it's really interesting. But the imposter syndrome is real for many of us. And so there are a lot of different ways to deal with it. First of all, just recognizing it is important, that it's something that most of us have. Then remember your strengths. So in one of my trainings, I do an exercise where I have people that, basically they have to say what their strengths are. And then they have to say what their weaknesses are. Now, most people have a really easier time to write down their weaknesses than writing down their strengths. Why? Well, our strengths, we discount them. Well, so I love to write. So I might say, well, it's easy for everybody. No, it's easy for me because I've done it and I'm used to it and I enjoy it. But it's not easy for everybody. And when you think about your strengths, just because it's easy for you and you enjoy it, doesn't mean it's not a strength. Maybe that's why it's a strength of yours. And the other thing is, again, in corporate America, what tends to happen a lot of times is that with our strengths, we're told to focus on our weaknesses. Research shows that unless it's a really bad weakness, that there are some weaknesses you really do need to fix, but unless it's a bad weakness, you're actually better off by building on your strengths. And what I mean by that is that instead of trying to fix your weaknesses, something that you're not good at and you don't like, which is going to take a lot longer, are there strengths that you have that you can use to overcome or reduce your weaknesses? And you're going to have better results if you build on that instead. So if I have, a weakness that's a problem, but I'm a really good communicator and my communication strength overcomes my weakness, work on that. The other thing that you can do to help feel confident is to be prepared. So again, I give a lot of presentations and I make it look easy because I just come on and I talk, but that's only because I've prepared for the 3 weeks before, or I've prepared for hours and hours before. And the idea is not that the butterflies are gone in my stomach, they're still here right now. But I like to think by preparation that the butterflies are flying in the same formation. In addition, I like to turn my nervousness into an excitement. And so I remember talking to a group and they were all talking about how nervous they were making presentations. And I said, my gosh, I am too. But if I can channel that nervousness into excitement or enthusiasm, or, that it's going to be an exciting time because I'm sharing, that helps me. So if you're not feeling confident, make sure you're prepared for that meeting or spend the time that you need to really work on it. Other ways to be confident: surround yourself with supportive people. And if you don't have supportive people, start finding some supportive people. Use affirmations, tell yourself, I can do this. I'm great at this. You can use relaxation techniques. There's breathing, meditation, I think is wonderful. There are great apps for that. You also want to visualize yourself looking and sounding confident. And so in one of my books, I talk about little mind movies. And so, for example, we typically have, when we're thinking about something, we typically have sort of a little mind movie that goes on, a little movie that we imagine what it's going to be like. And most of the time, though, those movies are negative. So, for example, I went to get an award one time and I was sitting in the audience and I looked at the stage. You had to climb up some stairs to the stage and the stairs looked very small. And so I immediately started telling a story to myself that I'm going to trip down the stairs. Well, obviously that was not a good thing for me to tell myself. So I said, stop. And I said, new mind movie. And so instead I pictured myself confidently walking up the stairs and then gliding down the stairs with the award that I had just gotten and going back and sitting at my table. And that was the mind movie that I wanted to prepare my body and my mind for. And it was fine. I didn't trip. I walked up the stairs just fine. So for you, let's say you have to have a meeting with your boss. And so you immediately think, oh, this could be a tough meeting. My boss is not going to be happy. And so you're starting to picture a tough meeting with your boss. Instead, say stop. You are the director of your movie. So imagine sort of like you're the director, like at the door of your boss's office, let's say. And so you've got a camera and you see you and your boss talking and your boss is smiling and your boss is nodding and your boss is agreeing. That's what you want to think about. And by thinking about that, you can feel more confident. So those are some ways to feel more confident. The fact is that we sabotage ourselves. And so you can think about how you've seen women unwittingly sabotage themselves, either body language, words, or how they sound. If you want to, you can put them in the chat. You can put them to me and I will read them. I won't say anybody's name, or I won't say, who it was. If you want to, you can do that. Or you can just think to yourself, how have you sabotaged yourself? Don't share that in the chat, but I just want you to think about, are there things that you wish you had done differently and now you've gotten some ideas about? So if you want to put it in the chat, I'll come back and I will comment on that. And also if you have any questions, because we're going to go on to the second part, because I talked about confidence. I'm now going to talk about cooperation and competition. So if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in and I'll either handle them now or I'll handle them at the end where I'll take some more questions. So I'm going to make some big generalizations here. I've made some generalizations, but I want to be really clear that there are differences in the way men and women traditionally view work. However, everybody is an individual, okay? So I'm not going to say all men are this or all men, absolutely not. Everybody is an individual. And this concept that I'm going to share is from Dr. Pat Heim, and it's in a book called Hardball for Women that I think is a great, great book. Now, I'm taking her concept and I'm going to use an example now that we're in football season. And I'm going to say, if you were to think about how many people who like football, okay? So in the middle of this line, there are plenty of people that like football. All the way to the right, there are people who love football. Every weekend they're watching football. And then there are people on the other side who hate football. They couldn't care less. They have no idea what the team's names are. If I were to graph how many women like football, it would probably look something like this. There are plenty of women who like football. There are also a lot of women who love football, and there are women who hate football. And so it's not, I don't want to just say all women hate football, love football. There are plenty in the middle. Now, if I were then to graph how many men like football, there are plenty of men who like football. There are men who love football. There are men who couldn't stand football. They pay no attention to it. And so if I were to look at the graph, generally, you could probably agree that more men generally really like football than women. However, everybody is an individual. So you might say, oh, but my sister loves football and named her kid after, a quarterback. Or, my best friend who's a guy, he hates football and, doesn't pay any attention to it. So understand when I make generalizations that I talk about women and men, it's generally, and all the things I say, you could say, well, I'm not like that, or my best friend's not like that, or my partner's not like that. That's fine. So big generalizations. Now, generalizations. There are some big differences at work between men and women. The traditional female mindset generally values cooperation. They focus on relationships and want people to work well together. The traditional male mindset generally values competition. They want to win. And you could see that cooperation and competition are very different. And you can see how this is a big difference at work. So back to Dr. Deborah Tannen, the linguist. So she audio taped children, and it showed differences between little boys and little girls. Little girls focused on relationships. Little boys focused on competition. One example she had was she had two little girls that were playing ball, and she said, I throw the ball to you, you throw the ball back to me. And so they were throwing back. And there were two little boys, and one threw the ball up. He said, I'm gonna throw the ball to the roof. And the other little boy said, I'm gonna throw the ball to the moon, because he wanted it to be even higher than the roof. The fact is, when we grow up, audio tapes of men and women in the workplace showed similar tendencies. Girls tend to focus on relationships, boys competition. Now, do we change? Absolutely. But we tend to act in ways that are consistent with our learning based on messages we get from family, society, and media. Now, having said that, when I say that there are definitely some girls that are competitive. And so the family you grew up in may have been a very competitive family. And there are definitely boys that are more cooperative. So again, big generalizations. But here's generally what we learn as children, girls, how to play one-on-one. So typically when, I was playing with my friend, we played house, and, I was a mom with my dollies, and, my friend was a mom with her dollies. We learned how to get along, how to be fair to everybody, how to be liked, how to negotiate differences. And this last one is interesting. This is from Hardball for Women by Dr. Pat Heim again. How to keep the power dead even. And the idea here is that girls learn that there is no top mommy. I mean, when you're playing dolls, it's not like you're the manager mommy or something like that. You're even. Everybody is even. And so that's hard when you get to the workplace, because in the workplace, it's a hierarchy. But girls tend to think it's not a hierarchy. We're all the same. Whereas men tend to see there is a hierarchy, and the hierarchy is fine. So the hierarchy, always do what the coach says. Competition is the name of the game. How to be a good team player, how to stay focused on the goal. Winning is all that matters, and how to have a game plan. So all of those things make a difference. Now it's interesting. I'll tell you a story. So a friend of mine was telling me how his daughter was playing with the little boy next door. And something he said that, they got into a sort of a fight. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, they were playing this game where it was funny that they would say A is for, like, she would say A is for apple, and he would say B is for ball, and they will keep going back and forth. And so it got to X. And so it was the little boy's turn. And so he was kind of stuck. And so he said, X. And she said, X is for X-ray. And he said, Y is for yellow, Z is for zebra. I won. And she got mad. And I actually started laughing. And I said, okay, well, here's the thing. They were playing different games. That at the end, he was playing a game where he was going to win. She was playing a game where we take turns and, we both end at the same time, or we end and we're just both happy. Oh, we made it. And the fact that she gave him the answer, you would think that then he wouldn't want to win because she gave him the answer. No, he was just like, hey, you gave me the answer. Now I'm going to win. And so that's sort of what it's like at work sometimes, that women are trying to work together and the men are saying, great, you want to work together, but I'm going to go ahead and win. So when we think about this, traditional female mindset generally value cooperation, focus on relationships and people working together. And women may speak in a way that supports relations and men may hear it as not confident. So let me give you an example. So let's say there's a job opening. And so I think I want to go for the job opening, but my friend Gloria is going to go for the job opening. So I might say to, a male colleague of mine, well, Gloria wants it. And, so I think I'm going to, I'm not going to go for the job. And so my male friend is thinking, I'm going to go for the job. And if I win over Gloria, good for me. And instead, he's going to think Laura is not confident. Or my boss, when I say, no, I'm not going to go for it, again, might see that as not confidence. He's not going to say, wow, good for Laura. Laura is cooperating and really supporting, her friend. No, he's going to think, why isn't she doing this? That doesn't make sense. So that's just an example of a difference. So here's the problem. If we see competition as bad and we avoid it, we may lose opportunities. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with competition. Competition can be helpful. If you have competition, you can get maybe more ideas, or maybe it can be fun. I mean, it's fun to, have a little race or something. But if we think competition is bad because it pits me against my friends, then I'm not going to do it. And again, then I'm not going to raise my hand for projects, and I'm not going to push to do things, and you lose opportunities. Instead, I want you to turn it around and see competition can be a positive option. And even if you don't agree with that right now, I want you to explore it and see, how could competition help? What could it help me do if I became a little more competitive? Now, having said that, the question I get all the time is, do I need to be more like a man? Do I now need to be competitive? Absolutely not. All I want you to do is understand and question and see some things. And you're going to choose how to act. Now, you can choose not to change anything, but I just want you to see a little bit differently. You could also maybe change and push yourself to try some things, some different ways, try some new things, even if you're not comfortable, because that's part of learning, to push yourself and try some new things. And I want you to ask yourself, what would a successful person do in this situation? Now, it's funny, what I used to ask women is I'd say, well, what would a successful guy do in this situation? And a lot of times they would say, oh, well, a successful guy would, call this person and do this and do that. And I'd say, well, why aren't you doing that? Oh, I couldn't do that. But that's evolved, that's changed. But I would always ask, not what would a guy do, but in my company, in my organization, in my industry, what would the most successful person do? How could I do that? Or how could I learn from that? And that's what I want to push you to do. So think about, what would a successful person do? Now, here are some additional resources. I've mentioned some of these. Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. Actually, it's now called Nice Girls Still Don't Get the Corner Office by Lois Frankel. Great concepts in there. Talking 9 to 5 by Deborah Tan, and I mentioned that. Presence by Amy Cuddy. I didn't mention it, but she's the Harvard researcher, and it's a great book. And then the other book that I mentioned, Hardball for Women by Dr. Pat Heim. I highly recommend all of these books. I think that they're great to look at for additional information. Now, here's something I'm going to give you. So it's not connected exactly to confidence. However, it's connected to happiness. And I think we could all use a little more happiness. So I have a free video on how to be happier at work, 7 research-based ways, based on a great book called The Happiness Advantage. And all you have to do is go to my website, Career Tips for Women, and there are different tabs. One of the tabs is courses and books. So go ahead and click that. You'll find other courses and some of my other books. But go ahead and look for the How to Be Happier at Work. So that's my gift to you today, how to be happier at work. Now, I would like to get this information out to even more people. More people need this information. So I would ask you, please connect me with the person that manages either the employee resource groups. So typically companies have employee resource groups or ERGs, or somebody in human resources. So I can often run this and other programs, either on diversity or programs on management that can help people that you know. So again, you can send them my email, or you can let me know who to contact. So thank you, because again, I want to share this. Now, go ahead and you share this information and go ahead and let people know. And the more you share, the more it reinforces it for you. So next steps, I want you to think about, what do you do that shows confidence? But even more than that, what do you think is getting in the way? Is it your body language? Is it your words? Is it your tone? Is it you're uncomfortable? Is it you've never tried it? I remember talking to one person, she said, well, I tried that once. And I said, well, when? She said, well, 10 years ago. And somebody gave me a negative comment. And so when she said it, she sort of started laughing, like, yeah, I know. She said, okay, maybe it's time to try it again. So what's really getting in your way? What are you afraid of? Or what are you not comfortable with? And I want you to think about what you could do and choose one small step. So based on what you learned today, pick one small thing that you could try or do differently. And so again, let's go back to the confidence. Is it something you could do to look, sound, or feel more confident? Is it that you could watch the videos, that you could get one of the books? Or when you think about competition and cooperation, is it that you take a look at how other people are competing and how other people are cooperating? And are you going to try a little bit of competition? Are you going to test it out? So I want you to choose one small step. And I want to just ask you, if you have any ideas or any questions at this point, again, you can go ahead and put it in the chat to me or to everybody. And before we end up, I just want to say thank you. I want to thank you. I know that you have plenty of other things to do. My hope today is that you have gotten some new ideas, that you've questioned some things that maybe you thought were obvious, and you have some things that you want to test out, that you're willing to look at, that you're willing to see. Oh, okay. So go back. So again, here are the names of the books. In case you're interested, Nice Girls Still Don't Get the Corner Office, Talking from 9 to 5, Presence, and Hardball for Women. So again, I just want to thank you for joining today. If you have any questions at all, please go ahead and send them to me. I will be happy to answer them. One of the things I love doing is helping everybody be even more successful. And the things I've talked about today, I have seen work. I have seen women use this, and I've seen it help them to be more successful. I've found it for myself, and I hope you will take these things, use them, and be even more successful than you are. So thank you so much. Again, if you have any questions at all, please go ahead, send me a message. We're going to end up. Thanks for joining today. Bye-bye.